Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn how to draw a realistic eye using something called the grid method. Now the grid method is a technique that artists use for accuracy in their drawing and also to help with enlarging a subject. Okay, it could be any subject, does not have to be an eye. But what you're doing is you're creating a one-to-one correspondence and with the squares on your subject and the squares on your paper that you're drawing on, okay? So whatever you draw in a square here is going to show up in the squares on your paper. And it helps students because it breaks everything down into manageable chunks, okay? As opposed to just trying to look at something and draw it accurately. Sometimes that doesn't matter so much, but when you're drawing realistically, you're gonna want to use this until you build your skill set up to some extent. Okay, so in order to do this, we're going to have to start by creating our grid. The grid is gonna look like this. Okay, the grid's gonna look like this, but it needs to be measured out accurately. Okay, so start by writing your name and your section number on your paper. If you are in first period on A days, you're going to be writing A1. If you're second period, or A2, and so on. You're going to be needing an 18-inch ruler. You're going to line it up with the corner of your paper and make a mark every 3 inches to start. This paper that I'm working on is 12 inches by 15 inches, so I'm going to have 5 squares along the long end of the paper, and I'm going to have 4 squares along the short edge of the paper. It's just important that you're accurate because that's going to make your life a whole lot easier when you start on the actual drawing and shading of this project. So begin by lining up the ruler each time, making a light mark with, we're using an H pencil. I have a 2H pencil to start with because we want to make sure that that we're not making dark marks. We need to be able to erase. So if you look at the end of the pencil, you'll see the 2H designation. H would be fine as well. You just don't want to go into the B range for this because the B is a softer graphite. You don't want that. Okay, so we're going to start by laying the ruler and matching up the dots and drawing a line going across the paper. We're going to do that all the way across to start with, making sure your lines are parallel to each other, equidistant on both ends, connecting those dots, turning the paper this way and doing the same thing. You need to make sure, again, you're not pressing down too hard. These marks that I'm making are probably a little darker than what you're going to need to make. I just wanted to be certain that you could see it on the video. So I am done creating my grid. Okay. So now that I have my grid, I'm going to keep my my photograph right by me here. I need to figure out where I want to start. So with this assignment, I'm going to start by drawing the upper part of the eyelid, this upper edge here. That nice crease looks like a good place to start. So what I need to do is I need to identify which square I'm working in. So I'm in the first square from the left, but on the second one down. So that would be this one on my paper. So think about Battleship. If you've ever played the game Battleship, you know, you're in the first row and you're going down one here to the second block, okay? It may be different on your eye. It depends on the drawing that you're working from. What I need to do first is I need to look to see where this line here starts and ends. So it looks to be pretty close to this corner right here. So I would say it goes to about there. but it actually, if it's extended, it comes down to the corner here. And it looks like there's a little bit of a gentle kind of curve, okay? And then when I look at this next box, which is the first row across, but second one over, this comes to a bit less than the halfway point, okay? So what I'm gonna need to do is I'm gonna move this, and I'm going to bring this over curve to less than the halfway point on this line, okay? This line here is almost straight, not quite, a little bit of a curve. And then this, if you can see, comes down to right about here. So I'm going to connect that line down to right about there with a little bit of a curve. And then this continues down through this square over here. Okay, so that's pretty good for the top line. I can go over it a little bit just to kind of block that in a little bit more so you can see it. Now I'm going to be working on the edge of the lower edge of the upper lid. Now keep in mind that these eyelashes are going to be covering up part of this eye here. But right now I'm not going to think about those. I'm just going to draw the edge of the upper eyelid, I should say. Okay, so it looks like I need to start right about here. Okay, that makes pretty good sense. It looks like this ends right about here. So I'm going to start by curving that up. Where does it go next? It goes to about here. I'm going to curve that to there. Okay, this kind of comes as a curve and kind of comes to about there. That's about accurate. This then comes, looks to be about a quarter of the way up. So it looks like it could be a little bit lower, something like that. And then it goes down and kind of will trail off there somehow, okay? All right, so I'm looking at this heavy shadow right here, and I'm gonna kind of mark where that would be. This bottom lid right here has a little bump to start with, but it's fairly close to that bottom edge, especially when you get down through here. You see how close that skirts that line right there. So I'm going to bring it down and then back up a little bit right about here. It looks like it ends right about there, and then is going to curve all the way up to about here. So that's about right. So that comes to about here and then crosses over that line, and it looks like it meets the upper lid right about there. Okay. This is the corner of the eye. There's some skin right there. It looks to be a little higher up, kind of right around there. Now I'm going to start to work on the iris and the pupil. If I look at where this line exists in this square right here, I'm going to start right about here, and it looks like it curves down like this, and then comes, it's going to come all the way down. I want you to look ahead to see where the line ends, because the circle actually ends on that line there. So that will give you a better idea of where that curve should go. And then it looks like it goes behind the lower lid, comes up right here, crosses over this square, and then kind of circles back in this area, kind of like that. Pretty good, I guess. It's not going to be perfect to start with. Now I'm looking at the pupil, and I'm looking at this area right here, which is, it's not a perfect circle. It kind of is a rough edge, but I am going to block in where I think it should be. It looks like it comes down kind of here. It goes out to pretty much halfway across that square, so that's about right, and kind of does that. Okay. Okay, so that is most of what we need. I would say I could kind of block. There's a couple of little creases in here. This is somebody who is probably not super young. There's a couple wrinkles in there. So I'm gonna get a couple of, just block out where those would be. Like I said, I'm not worried about the eyelashes right now. I think we're gonna add those later. But this is a good basic start to the drawing. The next video, I'm going to start to talk about how to block in the darks. So again, when you are working on a drawing, particularly a graphite drawing, you want to make sure that you have a wide range of value in your work. Values go from the darkest darks to the lightest lights and everything in between. And if you can represent all those values in your drawing, you're going to have a very dynamic drawing. There are a few other things that we can go back into and kind of block in, but I basically wanted to give you the basics of how to get the shape of your eye. And like what I can do next here is maybe I might want to block in, for example, this this highlight before I do anything else, because I don't want to, it's going to be hard to erase really dark values. You want to keep the light one, keep the white showing on the lightest values, and then block in the dark values really dark next to it. So I'm probably going to suggest with the people who are working on this one, or if you were working on a different drawing, take a look at where the highlights on the eye are. It looks like this one comes down here. It comes right about to that line and then back up again like that. And again, there are some other details like the shadows of the eyelashes in this highlight, but again, I want to just kind of block in where I'm seeing that other highlight right here. This has kind of a soft edge here, but it does curve around. Remember, the eyeball is a sphere. So when you have a highlight sitting on the surface of your eye, it's going to have a curve to it. Because think of what, you know, think of a flashlight pointing at a pool ball or something like that, or a shiny sphere. You're going to have a curved, the light reflections, the highlights and stuff are going to follow the form of the object. And because the form of the object is rounded, you're going to have a rounded or curved highlight. So this is a good basic start. So I'm going to end there for today. I want you to go ahead and get started on that using your H pencil. And again, make sure your name's on your paper, and next class we'll pick up on the shading.